Going to be a quick tutorial on how to make a animated GIF inside of Photoshop. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing you want to make sure you do is set it up for a digital format. You don't want to do CMYK. You want it to be RGB, and you also want artboards to be unchecked, and that'll just save you a lot of problems later on down the road. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to make it 450 pixels by 450 pixels. We'll keep the resolution at 72, and we'll go ahead and click Create. Okay, so if you don't see this timeline down here, you can go up to Window, you can scroll down to the drop down, and you can make sure to have that checked right here. Okay, so once you have that checked, you can either click right here on Create Video Timeline. That's probably the easiest way, and that'll get you set up with your static layer. So static layers are going to be purple, and video layers are going to be blue. So if you'd like to create a new video layer, you have to go up to Layer up at the top, go to the drop down, find Video Layers, and then New Blank Video Layer. If you're pulling in a video that's already created, so say that you go to a site like pexels.com and you want to overlay something onto a video that already exists, you would just go up to Layer, Video Layers, and then you can select New Video Layer from File, and that will allow you to drop in a video that's already created. Okay, so notice how my timeline here is pretty small. That's just because if you come over here, you can see that it's just zoomed way out. Okay, if you want to zoom in further to your timeline, you just click on this little slider and you slide it towards the bigger mountains right here. Okay, so right now it's set at 5 seconds. Okay, so if you know how long, like say that the project requires you to have a 3-second long video, you can actually change this. So you can either click and drag the ends of your timeline layers here, and so say that I need it to be 3 seconds, I could slide it to 3 seconds. You can also slide this, so this is just the view area, and when you export your video, anything from here to the left is going to export, so nothing from here over. So anything to the right of this little viewing area won't export. Okay, so that's just a little trick for you guys. You can also change your timeline settings right here. So if you scroll over here to find these little lines rather, you click those, and then you've got some options over here. So you can set the timeline frame rate. So let's go ahead and do that first. And so right now mine is set at 30 frames per second. That's what FPS stands for. And that just means that it's going to take 30 frames before it gets to 1 second, which is a lot, especially when you're doing a little animation like this in Photoshop. So I like to drop it down less to maybe 15, half that. So it's going to take 15 frames to create 1 second. So you got to keep that in mind. It's tedious stuff sometimes. Okay, and then you just hit OK, and then I would drag this back for now. Once we set the frame rate, we want to go ahead and we can start working on our animation. So notice the purple layer, it's static. That's our static layer, and then our video layer is blue, and that's going to have this little film icon right here in the bottom right of our layer. Okay. You can also create new static layers over here just in the normal layers panel by clicking the plus sign, and that's going to create a new layer. Notice how it created it after my scrub head here. So if I had it here at 1 second and I add a new layer, it's going to add a new layer at that point in time on my timeline that my scrub head is at. Okay, you can also delete layers, so if I want to just delete these two, which I don't need those right now, I can just come over here click layer 3, click layer 2. I held shift, so click layer 3, hold shift, click layer 2, and then go ahead and hit the trash icon. And you want to delete the selected layers, and I'm going to say yes. So that's a quick way to delete a layer. You can also do that with your video layers as well. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in to my timeline so I can see each individual frame. So like I said, you're going to take the slider here for with the little mountains, and you're going to just drag it to the right until you can see 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frame, 4 frame. And notice how when I scrub through, it's snapping now to those frames, and I can't zoom any more into my timeline. Okay, so we're going to draw just a little bouncing ball. So that's going to be the first thing we're going to do. And I want a static layer of the ground. I want the ground to be static, and I don't want that to move. So I'm going to go ahead and click on layer 0, which is this first static layer. And then I'm going to select my brush tool by hitting B on my keyboard. And then I'm going to go over here to the left, and I'm going to change the color to something like green. Hit OK. And then now I can, Command Z. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to change the hardness to like 80. So it kind of looks like it kind of looks fuzzy. But you can change that. You can always change that to 100% and then make it more firm looking, I guess you could say. Okay, so I hit V, my move tool, that kind of takes off the brush tool, and then I can start working on my ball bouncing. So I've got my layer 0, so I'm going to double click on that text there on the right hand side on layers, and I'm going to just rename that to ground. Just something that I can understand what that is if I forget or if I get confused. And then I'm going to rename this layer 1 over here on the right hand side. I'm going to double click on the text, and I'm going to type bouncing ball, because that's where I'm going to put my bouncing ball. Okay, so one thing we want to enable before we kind of get started is onion skins. So if you come over here to the top right of your timeline panel and click those lines, we can select enable onion skins. So what that allows us to do is it's going to allow us to see what the frame before looks like, so that we can make a more fluid transition to the next slide, or to the next frame rather. Okay, so I'm going to start drawing the ball. So I'm going to hit B for my brush tool. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here. You can either draw it like this, a ball bouncing, or you can just make it your brush the size that you want it. Okay, I'm going to do it this way, just so it looks a little bit nicer. I'm going to scroll all the way to the left to the very beginning of my timeline. Okay, and I'm going to move to slide 1. So I'm going to start with nothing. I'm going to go to frame 1, and I'm going to pull my ball about right here. Actually, I'm going to Command Z and change the color. So I went over to the left hand side, and I'm going to, let's make it like a blue color, a teal color. Okay, so I'm on slide 1, or frame 1 on my bouncing ball video layer. I'm going to click once. I'm going to move to the next frame, and see how it kind of grays it out. That's just what the onion skins does. It allows us to see the frame before. And now I'm going to move this down a little bit and click, move my timeline forward. So now if I go over here to the top right of my timeline, I can uncheck enable onion skins, and then I can scroll all the way back and see what my timeline looks like so far. So you can either hit the space bar to see what that looks like, or you can press this play button right here on the bottom left hand side. Okay, so my timeline is set to 5 seconds right now, which is a long time. So I'm going to actually go ahead and move this down so I can see it better. And I'm going to click and drag my layers, just the right hand side, and I'm going to click it to about, or slide it to about 3 seconds. And that's going to readjust my timeline duration. So now it's at 3 seconds and not 5. So this isn't perfect, right? But you can spend a little bit more time, and if you actually draw the ball out, you can make it look like it's kind of stretching, and then it can compress when it hits the ground, and then it can bounce, and it makes it look a little bit more realistic. Okay, so that is how you can draw frame by frame. So now I'm going to create a new document, so Command N. Keep this the same, hit create. I'm going to create video timeline, and I'm going to show you how to animate text and different objects in. Okay, so I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to find some shoes that I cut out earlier, and I'm going to place those into my document, and I'm going to scale them down a little bit. Hit return. I'm going to zoom into my timeline a little bit better, and I'm going to add some text. So T for our type tool. I'm going to leave it at League Gothic. I'm just going to make it, I'll make it this blue, and then I'll just type something out. Just do it, move this up. Okay, so that's kind of how I want to keep it, and I want to make it 2 seconds long. So I'm going to scrub my layers over to 2 seconds, and I'm just going to do that for each layer. Okay, so I'm going to put a keyframe at 1 second. So that just means that it's going to tell Photoshop on the timeline exactly where these elements are in that moment in time. So to do that, you click this drop down, you find transform, and you click on this little stopwatch icon. And you want to make sure that your scrub head is exactly where you want it to be. So I want it to all come in at 1 second. So I'm going to click this stopwatch, and it creates a diamond shaped keyframe. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for my shoes. So click the drop down, click transform. It's going to create a keyframe. And now I'm going to scrub back to the beginning of my timeline. And I want these to move down, and I want this to move in from the left. So I'm going to hit V on my keyboard for my move tool. That's just this guy up here to the top left. And I'm going to click and drag this up. I'm going to hold shift so it stays in the same plane here. And I'm going to let go. And if you notice, it created a new keyframe. So anytime you create a keyframe, move forward or backwards in time, it's going to create a new keyframe. So you always want to make sure that the scrub head is in the right spot whenever you move an object. So now I can scrub forward and see that my shoes are moving in. And that looks good. So I'm going to move back, and I'm going to do that with the text. Now I'm going to hit V on my keyboard for my move tool. Click and drag this to the left. I'm holding shift so it stays in the same line here, and it created a new keyframe here. So yeah, that's pretty much it on that. You can also do things like rotate. So if I wanted to rotate the shoes, I could scrub back to the beginning, click on this keyframe because I want to modify it, and then Command T. I already have this layer selected, so I don't have to do anything else. actually I have both layers selected. So I'm going to click escape real quick, and I want to make sure that only my shoes layer is selected, and then also this keyframe. So Command T transforms, and then I can actually scale this down even and rotate it if I want. Hit return, and it should update my keyframe. So now it's rotating in and increasing in size. So that's how you animate text and an object. So next, the last thing we're going to talk about is how to animate kind of like squiggly text, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So Command N to create a new document. We'll keep it the same again. Create video timeline down here, and then we want to go to Layer, Video Layers, New Blank Video Layer, and I'll scroll in to my timeline. I'll make it a little bit shorter. And then I'll make sure that I can see each individual frame. Perfect. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some text. Just as a guide. We're going to go ahead and turn this layer off when we're done. But for now, we're going to leave that there. And then we're going to, like I said, we're going to turn that layer off before we export the actual GIF. And I'll show you how to export all of these here in a second. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I have my layer 1 selected, and I'm going to go to my brush tool, and I want to right click, make it a little bit smaller. Okay, perfect. Hit escape, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And now I can just start drawing. So I'm on layer 0, or I'm sorry, frame 0 on layer 1, which is my video layer. So I'm going to double click on this text over here just to rename it video text or something. You can make it say whatever you want. So click back on that layer, and then now I can start drawing. And then I might actually, since those are the same color, I'm going to click on my text layer here, my static text layer, and I'm going to lower the opacity up here, right here. That way I can kind of see it better. Perfect. Click back on your video text layer, and then you can keep drawing. Okay, I'm going to move forward 1 frame. And for something like this, you don't necessarily need onion skins enabled, but you would just click on these lines right here and enable onion skins if you'd like to do that. And then you just keep tracing, move forward 1 frame, and you just keep doing this. And remember, oh, actually I didn't set the I didn't set the frame rate, so they're going to be 30 frames before I get to a second. Oh gosh. So don't forget to do that, because now if I go back and change the frame rate, it's going to get rid of some of the work I did. Okay, so I'm not going to do it all 30 frames, but if I scrub through here, I'm going to turn off my layer. Just the viewing. You can actually delete it if you want. And now if I scrub through, you can kind of see how the text will start to move. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my other layer, or my other tab here, and I'm going to export out this bouncing ball. And this will be the same for all 3 of our examples here. So I'm going to go up to File, Export, Save for Web, Legacy. That's going to be the best way for us to export out this GIF. Make sure that this preset It says GIF. You can leave all this stuff the same actually. And then for this example, we can make it loop forever, but you can also change that. You can make it loop once, or if you only want it to loop 3 times, you can change that here on other. So go ahead and hit save. Save it to your desktop. Name it. Let's name it bouncing ball. Hit save. And there you go. And one thing that I didn't do is I didn't save these as Photoshop files. So always make sure that you save these as Photoshop files, because it'll retain your layers here. Otherwise it'll just be individual frames and it'll mess you up. So Command Shift S, save as Photoshop, and there you go. Okay, so now if you want to preview your GIF, you can come down to the bottom, click on your Finder, go to your desktop, because that's where I like to save mine. You can click once on your bouncing ball and hit the space bar, and there you go. That's it, guys. I hope you found this tutorial beneficial, and I'll talk to you next time.